The iPhone 15 Pro Max takes what you thought was possible with an iPhone and then raises the bar another notch. And many of the tricks that make this phone so incredible might not even be so obvious when you first get the phone. So in this video, I'm going to show you more than 25 tips, tricks, and just things you need to know about your iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. So the iPhone 15 Pro Max has a large 6.7-inch display, and it can be pretty hard sometimes if you only have one hand available to pull down that control center or pull down that notification center without doing some crazy hand gymnastics and possibly dropping your phone. Well, with reachability, you don't need to worry about that because when you swipe down, you get access to the top of your phone and you can easily, no matter how small your hands are, pull down that control center and notification center. So head into your settings and go to accessibility and then to touch, and then right here, the second option is reachability. If that's not enabled, turn that on, and that way, anytime you're in an application or on the home screen or anywhere, you could just swipe down right here from the center of the screen down, and you could get access easily to that control center and that notification center. But it's not just the top area that's hard to reach with one hand, it's also when you're typing. It's hard to reach all the way from the Q and then go back to the P and back and forth. Well, we have a solution for that as well. So tap and hold on the emoji button right down here in the bottom left, and then if you're right-handed or left-handed, go to this option right here and then let go, and now you have a one-handed keyboard. You can type just like so, and then just press this arrow to go back to normal. So the iPhone 15 Pro Max now has a 5x button in the camera application, and that's because we have a new telephoto camera that is exclusive to the Pro Max, and this uses Apple's tetraprism design. Now keep in mind, this is still a 12 megapixel camera, but the sensor is 25% larger than the 14 Pro Max. Now we do have 5x optical zoom and 25x digital zoom, and you'll notice that when you start zooming in, you get a little preview up in the top right hand corner so you can keep track of what you're shooting when you're really zoomed in. Now this new camera also includes a 3-axis image stabilization, which is a first for any smartphone, and Apple claims it's the most advanced stabilization system yet, with 10,000 micro adjustments per second, and this really stands out when you use action mode while zoomed in. It is insane the results you can get. And fun fact, since Apple needed to use more space with the new telephoto lens, the camera layout has also changed. So the telephoto lens is now on the far right where the ultra wide lens used to be. All right, so we cannot go any further without talking about the action button. This is one of the headlining features for the Pro models this year, one of the biggest differentiators between the Pros and the regular iPhone 15s. So what this does is it allows you to go into your settings under action button and map what you want that to do. So now if you press and hold, of course it does turn on the flashlight in this instance, and it can do any of these tasks. And while the default ones here, the preset ones, are cool, I highly recommend you to explore these shortcuts. And I made a full guide for customizing shortcuts for the action button to get things like this, where you have pretty much a second control center where you can do all types of different things. You can replace Siri with ChatGPT. You can do so much. So please set this to shortcuts and just explore what is possible because it is insane. But if you're not going to use the shortcuts and you maybe prefer the camera, there is a little tip here when we have the video selected. So if you have video selected under camera and you tap and hold to go into the video, you can also now press and hold the action button to start recording. So if you press and hold, it will start recording a video and it will stop once you let go. But I will say, if you're not a fan of the action button, or if you just want to double dip and have another action set up on your phone, you can enable back tap. So if you go into your settings and go to accessibility and then to touch and go all the way down to the bottom, we have back tap. And this allows you to set actions based on a double tap or a triple tap. So if I triple tap on the back of my phone, it will open up the camera. So 3 taps and there we go. It opens up the camera. Now I don't need that action button, to go ahead and lead me to the camera because I already have that with the triple press on the back. So you can kind of set up multiple different actions using, both the action button and back tap, or you can choose one or the other. You can pretty much do the exact same things in back tap as you can in action mode because you have all of your accessibility settings and all of your shortcuts as well. Now, something else you need to understand if you have an iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max is that the USB-C port on the bottom is not just for charging, and it's not just for those fast transfer speeds, because we do have USB 3.0 transfer speeds if you do have a USB 3 cable on the Pros this year, but that's not really the fun of it. I mean, the fun you get out of the USB-C port is the fact that you can now plug in external SSDs. You can even record video, ProRes video straight to M.2, those external SSDs. You can plug in these super fun little fans that are fully powered by the 15 Pro and Pro Max, and my favorite thing to do is shoot that ProRAW 4Res 60 FPS footage directly onto an SD card using a USB-C to SD card reader. It is incredible. And you can even shoot video in log format if you want to color grade later, straight from the iPhone. That's awesome. Now, the next tip you need to know about your iPhone 15 Pro Max is that it might be made of titanium. It might feel tough, but I don't know if you've seen the drop test here on YouTube or not, but it's not going to survive a drop without a case. And thankfully, our sponsor Casetify can help you protect your investment. So first off, Casetify is not just for cute and trendy cases anymore. They've really stepped it up over the past few years. And last year I showed you their bounce case, but this year they have an all new ultra bounce case for the 15 Pro and Pro Max. And man, does this case have a presence to it. So it has a 6-layer rugged design, an integrated lens protector, ultra reinforced corners, and of course their proprietary EcoShock technology that all comes together to give this case a 10 times military grade rating. And unless you're dropping your iPhone from 32.8 feet or higher, you're going to be protected. I even had trouble getting the paper out of this case, so you know your phone is never going anywhere. But of course, if you don't need all that crazy protection, they also have the bounce case from last year, which is less intense but still ultra protective, along with the classic impact case, which is my favorite. And this is a much slimmer case that also offers great protection. And you know, I said the impact was my favorite, but actually they also just launched a new impact ring stand, which is just a slight variation of the impact case. And this comes with a kickstand that pops out of the camera now. So that may actually be my new favorite. All of these cases are MagSafe compatible, and the design possibilities are endless as they have collabs with Spider-Man, Star Wars, Oreo, the NBA, and many more. And of course, they do have their online customizer as well, where you can build out your own case. But I like simple, I'm boring, so I'm a big fan of the basic colors. And I just know that Casetify cases are some of the most comfortable in the hand, so that honestly matters more to me than design at the end of the day. So if you want to pick up a new case for your iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max, head over to casetify.com/BrandonButch to save 15% off on your order. Now, one of my favorite features about the USB-C port on the bottom of our iPhone 15 Pros is the fact that we can now power other devices and other accessories using the power from our phone. So if I plug this in right here, you will see that the devices will talk to each other and will determine which one has the most battery power, and the one with the least amount of charge will be the one that gets charged by the other. And you can even charge your AirPods, your Apple Watch, pretty much anything is able to be charged from the iPhone. And I mentioned how the iPhone with the most battery will be the one charging the one with the lower amount of battery, but that was only if it's USB-C to USB-C. Now, if you do USB-C to Lightning, so if I plug in a Lightning iPhone right here, it doesn't matter the charge level, the USB-C iPhone is always going to power the Lightning iPhone. Now, there's also a brand new setting that is exclusive to the iPhone 15 Pros this year that you absolutely need to know about. So if you go to settings and then go to battery and then to battery health and charging and then into charging optimization, right here we have a brand new option for 80% limit. Before, we only had optimized battery charging or none at all, but now we have the ability to only charge our phone up to 80%. And you might be wondering, why would you only want to charge up to 80% instead of to 100%? And the answer is simple. It's just better for your battery long term. It's better for the lithium-ion battery inside of your iPhone. Now, you don't want to set it to 80% if you're going to use more than 80% in a day. This is more so meant for those who are not super heavy users and may not use the full 80% in a day, because if you do use more than 80%, it defeats the whole purpose of having this set, because you're just going to have to charge your phone up again throughout the day, and that could count as another cycle in the cycle counts. So we've all been there. Your phone's in your pocket, you're walking around in public, and somebody stops you and says, hey, your flashlight's on in your pocket, and you had no idea that it was on. Well, now you don't have to worry about that, because we get a visualizer up in the dynamic island that shows that the flashlight is on. And if you tap and hold on that, you get the option to turn it off from here as well. So it shows on, and if you press on the little flashlight icon, it turns it off very easily without having to go back into the control center to turn it off. Now, one of the biggest changes to the iPhone 15 camera system this year is that 24 megapixels is now the default camera output, not 12 megapixels. So every year before, 12 megapixels was the quality of when we took a photo with the main lens. It always came out at 12 megapixels, but now it is double that at 24. So I just encourage you you to go take some photos and really start pixel peeping. Zoom in on those photos and look at how much better they are than the 12 megapixel shots, even from the 14 Pro Max. It's a pretty big difference. However, that 24 megapixels still is not taking advantage of the full 48 megapixel system that our 15 Pro and Pro Max has. So we need to change that. So go into your settings and then go to formats, and then right here under Pro default, first off, you need to make sure that Pro RAW and resolution control is turned on. If that is not on, toggle that switch on, and then go to Pro default. And in here, you have some options to configure. So you have HEIF Max, Pro RAW 12 megapixel, and Pro RAW Max, which is Pro RAW up to 48 megapixels. And the thing you want to keep in mind here is, first off, look at the sizes. Look at the file size for the HEIF Max photos. 5 megabytes compared to 25 and 75 megabytes. And I've tested this, Pro RAW Max versus HEIF Max, and there is hardly any difference whatsoever. So I would recommend setting that to HEIF Max. And if you go into the camera here and you go to the photo section, you will see that HEIF Max is now up in the top. And if you tap and hold on that, you get the option to change the setting on the fly so that you do not need to go into your camera settings every time you want to change that. And if you don't want that setting changing up on you the next time you go into the camera app, just go to preserve settings right here and then make sure that you have this set right here, Pro RAW and resolution control. Make sure that is enabled. That way it doesn't reset on you. And that's another tip I can throw in here. Just make sure you have preserve settings set for anything that you want to be permanent pretty much on your camera. If you don't want something resetting back to default, make sure to have that set right here. Like especially for things like the macro control or like night mode or live photos. Like if you don't want those to reset to their default setting after you leave the camera and go back into it, you need to turn these toggles on. Now, something else you might not have noticed about the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max is that you now get additional lenses for the 1X main camera. So if you tap on the 1X, you can see 28 millimeters and then also 35 millimeters. So you basically get 3 camera focal lengths in one by tapping on that 1X button, and you can change that in the settings as well. So if you go to your camera settings and then go down here, you will see we have a new option, a new section for main camera. If you go into that, you can enable or disable those additional 28 and 35 millimeter lenses. And then you also get the ability to set your default lens. So if you want your default main camera lens to stay at 1X, you could just choose that, or you could choose any of these other options that you have right here. And of course, if you disable that, they disappear from this menu. And the thing you need to know about this as well is that you're not losing quality. Like if you go up to the 35 millimeter 1.5X, you're not losing quality because this crops in from the 48 megapixel lens. So each photo is still taken in 24 megapixels. So don't worry about losing quality if you choose a new default lens. Now, something else you need to know about the iPhone 15 Pro Max is that we do have a titanium build, and that leads to a 10% weight reduction from the 14 Pro Max. And that also makes this the lightest Pro Max iPhone since the 11 Pro Max. And then speaking of the build quality for the iPhone 15 Pro Max, we also have a redesigned frame that allows for the back glass to be easily removed for repairs. So this is the first time ever that a Pro iPhone can be officially opened from the front and the back for repairs. So no more paying $500 to $600 for a back glass repair. It's going to be much cheaper now. And the iPhone 14s saw this last year, but that was just for the base 14. The Pros did not get the same treatment. But now you're not going to be paying even half of that $500 to repair that back glass. Now, something else you need to know about the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max is that we now get a whopping 8 gigabytes of RAM. And I've tested this so much in my time with the phone so far, and I've noticed that applications do not close in the background near as easily as they have in the past. So if you like multitasking, if you like keeping applications open for long periods of time, like gaming, or, I noticed even with DraftKings, for example, that application stayed alive overnight while I was editing a lineup the previous night. It just stayed up in the background. It did not refresh. So the 8 gigabytes of RAM is no joke on these phones. So just don't worry about leaving applications open in the background. They will stay there for a very long time. Now, also in the Pros, we do have the A17 Pro chip with hardware accelerated ray tracing. So gaming is insane on the iPhone 15 Pro and especially on the Pro Max. Since it is bigger, we do have that better battery life, and just try gaming. Just give it a chance. Even if you're not into gaming, try it out, and you could even connect it to some USB-C devices. You can hook it up to a monitor or a projector. You could just do a lot with gaming now, thanks to that A17 Pro chip. Now, we also have Wi-Fi 6E support, which means you get faster Wi-Fi speeds if you have a Wi-Fi 6E router. And we also have Thread support for the first time on an iPhone. So Thread, if you don't know, is a mesh networking protocol that's designed for improving reliability of smart home devices. So before, you needed a HomePod or an Apple TV to serve as a home hub, but now your phone has Thread built in, so there's no need to route everything through a home hub. So the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max do have an always-on display, and it's nice. I like seeing the time and the notifications at a glance, but the problem is that you can never see your battery life when you are in the always-on display unless you tap on it, and that kind of defeats the purpose. So you should go ahead and add a widget to the lock screen. So if we go here to customize and go to the lock screen, we're going to add in a battery widget of our phone, and now you can see that even when you're in the always-on display, we're going to tap done right there and then go back and lock our device. You can see the battery percentage level that we're at. Now, there's also some settings you might want to change for this as well. So if you go to your settings, display and brightness, and then down here to always on display, I would probably recommend having show wallpaper turned off. That way you can save as much battery as possible. So now when you go to the always on display, it's kind of just like a black screen where you can still see everything like your time and your widgets. You just don't get your wallpaper until you tap on it, but that could lead to improved battery life. And of course, if you don't want your notifications showing up there on the always on display, you can turn that off as well, although I keep that enabled. And one of the biggest complaints about the always on display on the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max is that it's still too bright. Like even when it's the always on display at night, it's still a little bit too bright, and you could actually reduce the brightness for the always on display. So if you go into your settings and then go to accessibility and then to display and text size and then go all the way down to the bottom, and you will see that we have reduce white point. So if you go ahead down here and select that and maybe select it to, I don't know, maybe like 25 to 30%, that will reduce it just enough so that it gets a little bit darker and is right in that sweet spot area of where you would want an always on display. But of course you can tweak that to your liking. Just know that that reduce white point option is there, and I find it to be most useful for the always on display. And by the way, piggybacking off of the back tap feature that we had earlier, so if you go into back tap right here and then go to, we'll just say triple tap, and we set that to accessibility shortcut. If you go back into your accessibility settings and then go down to where you have accessibility shortcut and you turn this on, select reduce white point, and now when you triple tap the back, it's going to reduce that white point for you automatically. You can see it dims. Tap it 3 times again and it goes back to normal. So you can turn that on and off on the fly with that little trick. Now, another little tip for you iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max users is to get rid of the silent switch up there next to the time. And it may just be me, but it's too big and it's distracting, and I don't need to always know that I'm in silent mode. So you can change this. If you go to settings and then to sounds and haptics, right here we have an option for show and status bar. If you turn that off, you can see it disappears, and now we have a clean, normal looking status bar again. Now, something else I need to mention about the camera is if you go into your settings and go to camera and then to record video and then go all the way down to the bottom, I would highly recommend turning on lock white balance. This is disabled for some reason, but I would recommend turning this on. That way your white balance does not change in the middle of recording a video. I don't think anything ruins a video more than the white balance automatically changing in the middle of the video. So turn that on. Now, one of the big new features in iOS 17 is standby mode. And if you have an iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max, you have some awesome additional features over the base model iPhone. So if you go into your standby settings and then go to, first off, you have always on right there. So you do have the option to turn your always on display on or off when in standby mode. I would recommend having that on. But if you go down to night mode, this is also a section that's exclusive to the pros, and we have night mode and motion to wake. But it's not just motion to wake either. You can also nudge to wake your iPhone. So if you're on standby mode and you nudge your table or you nudge your nightstand, that will wake up your phone. Awesome. Now there's also some things you might not know about the hardware of the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max, and that is that if you flip your phone upside down and look into the USB-C port, you might need a flashlight, but in there you can see the model and the origin. It's kind of hidden there inside of the USB-C port, but that looks pretty cool. And if you still have the box for your iPhone 15, take a black light to it and you'll see this hidden little stamp here that verifies that this is an official Apple product. Now the iPhone 15's also got a new modem this year, which leads to faster 5G speeds. So I've noticed that my 5G speeds are faster even compared to the 14 Pro Max. And if you go into your settings and go to cellular and then into your primary SIM card, if you go to voice and data, I would recommend having 5G auto turned on, especially if you had LTE on before. So even if you don't have 5G around you, turn 5G auto on. It could improve your speeds. And then also, if you don't care as much about battery life, you just want the best speeds possible and you always want to be on 5G, you can also turn on 5G standalone along with 5G on all the time. But I would only recommend that if you're in a big city where 5G is prominent and you always have 5G. Otherwise, keep that off and keep that on 5G auto. So those are more than 25 tips and tricks for the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you learned at least one new thing in this video. If you did, I would appreciate if you gave this video a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe for more iPhone 15 Pro Max and iPhone 15 content in general. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching. Make sure to click my link down in the description below to pick up your new Casetify case. And on that note, I will see you very soon.